If you work in real estate, one of the most important conversations happening right now is not just about mortgage rates or inventory. It's about listing control. And I think a lot of agents know this issue is out there, but many have not slowed down long enough to ask what it actually means for their business, their clients, and the future of how homes are marketed. So in this video, I want to break that down in plain English. Because when you strip away all the headlines, this debate is really about four things: who controls the listing, who gets access to the listing first, how much exposure the seller gets, and who benefits from the structure. Let's start with the foundation. For years, the MLS has been one of the most important systems in residential real estate. It has helped create cooperation between brokerages, broad exposure for listings, and shared access to inventory. NAR's clear cooperation policy still says that once a property is publicly marketed, it has to be submitted to the MLS within one business day. NAR also recently made clear that this does not ban pre-marketing. Office exclusives and coming soon strategies are still allowed. That part is important because sometimes this gets framed as if the entire industry is deciding whether private strategies should exist at all. That is not really the issue. The issue is where the line gets drawn, who draws it, and how these options are being used in practice. Now, fast forward to March 2026. Zillow launched Zillow Preview as a way to bring pre-market listings into the public environment rather than keeping them confined inside closed brokerage networks. At the same time, major companies and industry leaders are arguing over seller choice, transparency, control, and whether MLS organizations are protecting cooperation or limiting flexibility. On top of that, leaders from some of the largest MLSs are saying consolidation is likely and maybe inevitable. So this is not just a one-week controversy. This is a structural shift. And I think agents need to see it that way. Because if you're a listing agent, you now need to be able to explain all of the following. What is an office exclusive? And what is a coming soon? What counts as public marketing? And what are the benefits of broad MLS exposure? What are the risks of limited exposure? And how do portals fit into all of this? That is a different level of conversation than what many consumers are used to having. Most homeowners are not reading policy updates. They're not following MLS governance issues. They're not tracking product launches from portals. They just want to know, what is the best way to sell my house? And this is where the opportunity is for agents. The best agents in the next phase of the market are going to be educators. They're going to say, here are your options. Here is how each one works. Here is the gain, and here's what you might give up. And here's the strategy that makes the most sense for your goals. This is real value. For example, some sellers may have a legitimate reason to start with privacy. Maybe they want discretion. Maybe they want to test pricing. Maybe they're not ready for a full launch. That can be reasonable. But broad exposure also matters. More visibility can create more competition. More competition can improve leverage. And the more restricted a listing is, the more important it becomes that the seller fully understands what they may be sacrificing in exchange for privacy or control. This is where I think the industry has to be careful. Consumers deserve options, but they also deserve clarity, not slogans, not spin, not one size fits all talking points. Clarity. If an agent tells a seller to stay off the MLS, the seller should understand exactly why. If an agent recommends a public launch, the seller should understand exactly why. If a brokerage uses a phased marketing strategy, the seller should understand exactly how that affects exposure, timing, and buyer reach. That is what a professional guidance looks like. There's also a broker-owner angle here. When industry structure starts shifting, firms often focus on technology, lead generation, or recruiting. Those matter, but the bigger differentiator may be how well the brokerage helps agents explain these changes to consumers. Because when the market gets more complicated, the clearest communicator often wins. And that is especially true in 2026, when consumers are already dealing with affordability issues, changing inventory, and a lot of market uncertainty. So here's my takeaway. This debate is not really about defending the past or blindly chasing the future. It's about understanding how listing strategy is changing and making sure consumers are not lost in the middle of it. Real estate still works best when trust is high, communication is clear, and clients understand the strategy behind the decision. That is why conversation matters, not because it's dramatic, but because it's foundational. And if you're an agent, learn this. If you're a broker, teach this. If you're advising sellers, simplify this. Because listing control is becoming one of the biggest competitive and consumer issues in residential real estate. And the agents who can explain it best are going to be in a very strong position.